What if the most magical corner of your garden came from things no one else wanted? In this video, we'll reveal 15 unexpected dollar store finds that turn trash into absolute fairy garden treasures. You won't see step-by-step DIY here, only real, finished inspirations to spark your imagination. I'm from Archon Aesthetic Studio, where creativity meets everyday simplicity. Use the timestamps to jump to what you love. Ask questions in the comments. I'll be there. And if you feel inspired, create something with what you have. Start small. Start now. Maybe to you, this is just another video in your feed. But behind this screen is a real story and a small family trying to grow something meaningful. When you hit subscribe, you're not just following content. You're fueling a dream and helping us hold on to hope, one view at a time. Thank you for being here. Thank you for noticing. It means more than you know. One tree stump fairy door design. Sometimes, all it takes is a simple tree stump to remind us that even forgotten corners can become places of wonder. Here, an ordinary slice of wood has been transformed. A small door, curved, hand-painted, perfectly imperfect, now rests where bark meets bloom. The first door is crowned with color, tiny daisies, wildflowers, and joy in full bloom. Its charm doesn't lie in complexity, but in confidence. Confidence that a few silk flowers from a thrift basket, glued with care, can turn the end of a log into a magical gateway. The second door, soft blue and slightly shy, rests in the shade of climbing ivy. A welcome sign hangs gently above. An invitation not just to fairies, but to your own imagination. Lanterns flank each side, made from dollar store charms and a little patience. These aren't just decorations, they're signals. Light lives here, warmth lives here, story lives here. And the last door, nestled in moss, surrounded by painted mushrooms. It whispers of rainy days and tiny footsteps, of late-night whispers under a moon that only fairies see. This one feels older, like it's been here all along, waiting to be noticed. A soft layer of stones leads up to it, maybe laid by little hands, maybe placed there by you when you decide to build your own. You see, you don't need to be a builder. You don't need a workshop or expensive tools. You just need a piece of bark, a bit of time, and the willingness to believe that even a cracked pot, a stick, or a dollar store toy can hold magic. These fairy doors were made with almost nothing. A few low-cost finds, some glue, and a wild idea. But they give something back, don't they? A smile, a pause, a spark of something soft. This is your invitation to make something beautiful, not because it's perfect, but because it makes you feel something. Two, glow-in-the-dark mushroom lights. There's something about the way light touches the night in a garden. It doesn't demand attention, it gently arrives. And in the stillness of dusk, small things begin to glow with wonder. What you're seeing here didn't come from a store shelf or a big garden budget. It started with a bowl, a plastic bowl, one that someone else might have passed by at the dollar aisle. But with a little color, some patience, and the smallest bit of imagination, it became a glowing mushroom, standing proudly beneath the stars. In the first garden, these handmade toadstools become a gathering space for fairy figurines. They sit in a circle of stones, as if waiting for a story to begin. This is more than decor, it's a feeling, a soft, glowing place where childhood never fully leaves. You can make this with battery tea lights, painted bowls, and a little evening patience. Just a few steps away, a path begins to glow. One by one, colorful mushroom lights bloom beside each stepping stone. Blue, pink, orange, each casting its own quiet glow. This could be your walkway, a gentle invitation for guests, for kids, for dreams. You don't need perfection. You need contrast, placement, and a sense of where light should fall. Then there's the third idea, playful, bright, made from colanders. Yes, colanders. Red, yellow, blue, cheerful and honest. They stand tall on garden stakes, soaking up sunlight by day and shining softly at night. Each one was once a kitchen tool, now part of a magical outdoor world. What's beautiful here isn't the materials, it's the transformation. It's how something forgotten can become unforgettable, and how the smallest effort, lit from within, can change the way a garden feels. So if you have an old bowl, a solar light, or a few minutes on a quiet afternoon, maybe that's all you need to start. Not to copy this exactly, but to make something that feels like you. Because fairy lights don't come from stores, they come from stories. And your garden is waiting for the next one to begin. Three, Broken Pot Fairy Landscape. There's a kind of beauty that only broken things can offer. The kind that tells you, yes, this was once damaged, but now it holds a story. Here in this garden corner, a shattered clay pot becomes something far more meaningful. Layer by layer, it becomes a miniature world, a village for the small and the unseen, a landscape built not from perfection, but from rearranged possibility. The first scene shows a terracotta pot split wide, but intentionally. Each level reveals a new path, a new door, a place to pause. Tiny benches rest along gravel walkways, while curved wooden doors invite the eyes to wander. It may look detailed, but the ingredients are simple. A broken pot, some gravel, a few dollar store figurines, and most importantly, your time. In the next design, cracks become steps. Tiny fences line the tiers like old village walls, and a tiny bridge crosses a river of blue stones. Succulents lean in from the edge, vibrant, soft, alive. Here, structure and imagination meet. There's no symmetry, and that's the point. It feels real, like nature never followed straight lines. And then the third, a tower of layers, stacked like staircases through a hillside dream. A crooked little house perches at the top, watching over mossy terraces and a winding pebble trail. It's playful, peaceful, handmade. Everything here was once separate. A pot, some stones, a few plastic mushrooms. But together, it tells a story that's more than decorative. It's emotional. It reminds you that magic isn't flawless. It's often found in the fractured pieces we choose not to throw away. So if you ever drop a planter or find a chipped pot in a thrift bin, don't toss it. Look at it again. Because sometimes, the most magical thing you can grow doesn't begin in soil, but in the cracks. Four, Teacup mini garden scene. Some ideas don't begin with plans. They begin with a quiet glance at something forgotten. Like a teacup, sitting alone in a cupboard. Too delicate to throw away, too empty to use. But what if that teacup could hold more than tea? This collection of garden scenes doesn't take much space, only imagination. Each cup has become a world. A cottage with a red roof, a fence curved like a lullaby, a mossy path that leads to nowhere and everywhere. They're not just decorations. They feel like stories you forgot you knew. Stories of tiny homes and secret windows lit softly from within. In another scene, succulents rise like miniature trees, rooted in smooth river stones. A twig arch leans gently to the side, and beside it, a fairy waits. It feels like she belongs there, not just because of how it's made, but because of how it's placed, with care, with patience, with purpose. And then there's the final scene. A single cup, with moss like velvet and a fairy door pressed into its center. A mushroom glows beside it. A pink butterfly hovers above, clipped on with wire, but still somehow alive in the way it sits in sunlight. The message is clear. This isn't about buying more. It's about seeing more. Next time you pass a shelf of secondhand teacups, don't just walk by. Pick one up, feel its weight, and imagine what kind of world might fit inside. Because sometimes, the tiniest places hold the greatest charm. And maybe, just maybe, the best place to start your fairy garden is with a cup already in your kitchen. Five, lantern-style fairy terrarium. There's something comforting about a lantern. Long after it stops lighting the way, it still holds space. A shape for stories, a frame for wonder. Instead of flame, this lantern holds a tiny wooden bench, carefully placed atop moss that feels like soft earth at sunrise. A few golden lights twinkle like whispers, and when the door swings open, it's as if the forest itself has sent a message. Come sit for a while. Even the smallest corners deserve a little peace. In another lantern, a gentle glow falls over two fairies in quiet conversation. They sit across a pebble path, framed by petals, nestled among sunflowers. A small bulb above mimics moonlight, reflecting softly on the glass. It's a captured moment, paused in mid-dream. Proof that even dollar store finds can hold magic if arranged with care. And then there's the third, perhaps the most whimsical. A red-roofed cottage rests among moss and blue beads, with a coiled vine arching protectively over it. It looks like something a child might imagine, or a grown-up might forget they once did. And that's the power of these lantern terrariums. They don't just decorate, they invite you in. They whisper to the part of you that still believes. In gentle mornings, in talking flowers, in hidden realms behind tiny doors. So if you ever find a lantern, old, dusty, maybe forgotten, don't throw it away. Transform it. Fill it with light, with moss, with memory. Because sometimes, the things that once held fire can still hold warmth in a different way. Six, hanging colander garden basket. Sometimes, magic begins in the most unexpected of places. A simple colander, something we usually toss spaghetti into or forget at the back of the kitchen shelf, can suddenly become a vessel of wonder, a stage for stories waiting to unfold. In one version, it hangs gently from a tree branch, swaying ever so slightly in the breeze. Inside, moss blankets the surface like soft forest ground. A tiny red-roofed cottage sits nestled under a curtain of ivy, and scattered around it, glowing pebbles like drops of captured sunlight. It feels like a woodland dream, alive, breathing, and oddly comforting. Then there's the one adorned with succulents. Lush and plump, they spill over the sides like an enchanted waterfall. Right in the center, a small wooden fairy door peeks through, almost as if waiting for someone brave enough to knock. Below it, wind chimes tinkle softly, turning ordinary daylight into something that feels ethereal. But perhaps the most imaginative of all is the floating garden scene, where a stone path leads through miniature trees and handmade figurines. The colander becomes a miniature village in the sky, suspended like a thought just barely held together by strings of belief. It's a world built not with rules, but with curiosity. And here's the secret. None of this requires perfection, only intention. You don't need a design degree. You don't need rare supplies. Just a willingness to look at something common, a colander, a bit of moss, a handful of soil, and whisper to it, you can be more. These creations aren't just cute decorations. They are quiet declarations of creativity, of making space for magic, even in the smallest corner of your home. So if you ever feel stuck, overwhelmed, uninspired, go find something forgotten, something humble, and turn it into a little world of your own. Let your imagination spill over the edges. Let joy hang from chains. Let your garden float. Seven, Birdcage fairy home design. A birdcage, once a place to keep wings contained, now a sanctuary for imagination. The rusted charm of old iron, the worn white paint of vintage metal, or even the raw skeletal frame of a forgotten cage, they all hold potential for something far more tender, something whimsical. In one corner of a quiet garden, a white birdcage swings softly with the wind. Nestled inside is a tiny wooden bench and a miniature cottage, its roof cloaked in moss. Shimmering pebbles lay beneath, catching the light just enough to feel like moonstones. No fairy in sight, but you know one must live there. Perhaps she's out gathering morning dew in thimble-sized jars. Another rests gently on a garden table, kissed by sunlight. This one is older, rusted, weathered, and beautiful in its honesty. Around the base, soft pink flowers bloom. A tiny swing made of twine dangles from the center, still swaying as if someone just left. And windows, hand-painted, peek out like secret portals to other worlds. It's not a decoration. It's a diary. Every detail a memory of someone's hands creating, not consuming. And then there's the most playful of all, a fantasy under lock and key, watched over by a wide-eyed fairy in green. She leans on the bars, barefoot and smiling, as if about to invite you in. Below her feet, a carpet of moss, scattered with smooth stones, and a ring of spotted mushrooms. It's a terrarium for dreams, disguised as a dollar store transformation. That's the soul of these fairy garden cages. They are not just crafts. They're quiet reminders that freedom is not always about open skies. Sometimes, it's about creating a whole world within boundaries. A story inside steel. And the best part? It doesn't take much. A trip to the thrift store, a walk through your backyard, and a whisper of patience. You don't need perfection, just wonder, and maybe a bit of glue. So next time you see an empty birdcage, don't see what it once held. See what it could become. Eight, Mason Jar Fairy Glow Lantern. There's something quietly enchanting about a soft light glowing in the dark. It doesn't shout for attention. It simply exists, gently, beautifully, as if it was always meant to be there. In the hush of twilight, ordinary mason jars, the kind you might use for canning peaches or holding buttons, are reborn. Not just as lanterns, but as little worlds of wonder. Each one becomes a window into a softer, more magical version of reality. One sits alone on a garden step, golden light spilling out from its edges. Inside, moss cradles tiny stones, and a delicate silhouette of a fairy hovers mid-air. It's simple, but deeply moving. It whispers rather than speaks, inviting anyone who passes to pause, breathe, and remember the beauty of imagination. Another jar hangs from the branch of a tree, its glow tangled with the outlines of dried flowers and butterfly wings. There's something nostalgic about it, as if it belongs in a memory rather than a backyard. It reminds us how beauty doesn't need grandeur. Sometimes, it just needs a little light and a quiet place to shine. Further along a garden path, a row of these glowing jars stands like guardians of a hidden realm. Each one tells its own story, a different flower, a different sparkle, a different mood. And yet, together, they form a trail of wonder, guiding you toward a feeling you may have forgotten, that life can still feel magical. The best part? These moments of enchantment are possible for anyone. All it takes is a mason jar, a bit of creativity, and a willingness to see beyond what something is, into what it could be. A dollar store light, some gravel, a snippet of dried bloom. These are your tools, but your imagination is the real light. So the next time your garden feels quiet, let it glow. Let your jars tell silent stories. Let your nights feel like they belong in a dream. Because fairy tales aren't only for books. Sometimes, they glow softly on your porch, waiting to be noticed. Nine, Succulent Pot Fairy Stairs. In the still hush of morning sunlight, where shadows stretch soft and long across the patio, a tiny staircase begins to rise, not in a grand hall or a castle in the clouds, but nestled quietly between rosettes of green. These are no ordinary steps. Carved from slices of wood, stone, or bark, each one is a path to imagination. They wind gently upward through tufts of moss and succulents, toward what might be a fairy's front door, or perhaps the entrance to a world we've long forgotten to believe in. The beauty of this idea lies not in extravagance, but in its simplicity. With just a handful of inexpensive finds from a dollar store, a terracotta pot, a few pebbles, preserved moss, and a bundle of succulents, you can craft a scene that feels like it was pulled from a bedtime story. Each pot becomes its own hillside, and each path becomes a story waiting to be walked. The textures, rough bark against soft soil, the firm cool of stone steps beneath tiny imagined feet, all come alive when bathed in natural light. No filters, no tricks, just a bit of patience, a sprinkle of moss, and your own hands shaping something quietly magical. Let your imagination guide the trail. Maybe the steps spiral to a flag at the top. Maybe they lead to a hidden garden gate. What matters most is that they lead somewhere, a destination not just for fairies, but for you. If you've never gardened before, don't worry. These creations aren't about perfection. They're about discovery. And when you're done, step back. Look closely. See how something so small can transform an entire space, and maybe even stir something inside you that's been sleeping for far too long. Wood box pebble path garden. Sometimes, magic doesn't live in grand castles or distant forests. It hides in the smallest corners of your backyard, waiting to be awakened. And all it takes is a wooden box, a handful of pebbles, and a gentle touch of imagination. What you're looking at is not just a garden, it's a story told in miniature. A drawer, perhaps once forgotten in a dusty garage, now reborn into a peaceful sanctuary. Soft green moss becomes a welcoming lawn. Tiny chairs rest quietly by a curved pebble path, as if inviting a fairy or two to sit under the morning sun. Each element is simple, yet deeply intentional. A handcrafted swing made from twigs sways gently in the breeze, crafted not from money, but from care. Dollar store items like river stones, popsicle sticks, faux moss, and toy houses come together not just to decorate, but to transport. To remind us that wonder doesn't have to cost much. It just needs to be noticed. If you've ever felt like creating something charming but manageable, this is it. You don't need a vast garden or fancy supplies. Just a box, some soil, a few succulents or moss, and the heart to build something small, yet unforgettable. And that's the heart of this video, to show you how beauty can bloom from the ordinary. So take your time, breathe deeply, and let your creativity wander. Build not just with your hands, but with your wonder. Upcycled figurine fairy friends. In a forgotten drawer, once loved toys sleep quietly, waiting. A doll missing its shoes, a unicorn with faded paint, a tiny creature whose wings were never meant to fly. But with just a brush of imagination and a whisper of creativity, they return, not as old toys, but as beloved guardians of a miniature world. The magic lies not in buying something new, but in transforming what's already yours. These figurines, reborn with wings of fabric and crowns made from garden twigs, tell a story far greater than their plastic origins. They become fairies, forest folk, mythical protectors of your little green sanctuary. Placed carefully among blooming violets, moss-covered stones, or next to a handmade log cabin. These characters breathe personality into every corner of your fairy garden. And because they're upcycled, each one carries a sense of personal history, a silent wink from childhood, a spark of memory in disguise. Here's a tip. Look for small figurines with soft shapes or kind expressions. A little acrylic paint, some leaf scraps, or even glittered paper wings can turn anything into a character worth believing in. Use hot glue to attach wings or crowns. If you're working with kids, let them create the personalities. Give your fairy cat a name. Let your unicorn choose its favorite moss patch. The sunlight helps. Let it pour onto your garden as you work. You'll notice how suddenly these tiny friends feel alive. Not because they move, but because you see them differently. That's the essence of fairy garden magic, not just in what you see, but in what you allow yourself to believe. "12. Tiered Cupcake Stand Garden." There's something magical about giving forgotten things new life. An old cupcake stand, once used to display sweet treats at parties, now finds purpose in an enchanted role, not for desserts, but for dreams. With a little imagination and just a few humble finds from a dollar store, it becomes a stage where tiny stories unfold. In the first scene, the metal spirals cradle slices of bark like small woodland stools. Handmade fences form protective circles around them, and delicate paper butterflies perch gently as if whispering secrets to the wind. The texture of tree bark and twine, warmed by sunlight, gives it the charm of something real, something loved. Next, we see the soft pastel hues of cupcake liners, now cradling rosettes of succulents. They bloom like living sculptures. Little fairies rest among them. One swings her legs playfully, another keeps watch with her garden tools by her side. Everything here feels gentle, joyful. Even the tools are perfectly sized for their imaginary caretakers. And finally, a true wonder, a 3-tier white stand transformed into a world of layers. The base tier is a mossy meadow, complete with stepping stones and purple blossoms tucked in place. The center holds a tea party under the open sky, where fairies gather over tiny cups and laughter we cannot hear. At the very top sits a whimsical fairy cottage, the kind only visible to those who believe. Each level tells a different part of a fairy tale. No two moments alike, and yet each flowing gently into the next. Tip for your own version: let each tier reflect a mood. Use moss, bark, or faux grass mats as base textures. Reuse miniatures from old toys, dollar store figurines, or print your own fairy elements on cardstock. Small stones can become paths, bottle caps become tableware, and cupcake liners make for the softest, sweetest planters. Fairy gardens aren't about perfection. They're about charm, imagination, and the beauty of creating something tender with your own 2 hands. So don't wait. Wander the aisles of your nearest thrift or dollar store and ask, what could this become? You'll be amazed at the answers your heart gives back. And perhaps, when you're done, place your tiered creation by the window, on a table, or under a tree. Let it remind you that magic doesn't have to be far away. Sometimes, it's just a few tiny wings and a wild idea away. If this video meant something to you, please know that subscribing means the world to me. You're not just supporting content, you're supporting a dream that keeps my family going. Thank you, truly. I'd also love to hear from you. What did you enjoy the most? Is there anything I could do better to keep inspiring or simply entertaining you? Your feedback helps this channel grow with heart and purpose. Let me know in the comments. I read every one.